Hey y'all, on today's episode, we have Impact alumni and our good friend, Tom Arnold. He shares his very interesting story of addiction and also his amazing story of recovery with myself and Chad Lentscher. So tune in, it's a great one. Welcome to Impacting Recovery Uncensored. I'm your host, Sarah Pritchard. This is a podcast where we dive deep into the real, uncensored truths about addiction, recovery, and everything in between. No sugarcoating and no judgment, just honest conversations that can help lift up the solution. So let's get started today. I'm very excited. We have our good friend, Mr. Chad Lentscher, here again. And we also have Tom Arnold, who is an Impact alumni and a really good friend as well. So how's everybody doing?
I'm doing well. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Thank you for coming. Chad,
And I'm really here just to keep Tom honest. Since I was there throughout the process, he could easily get away with lying to you. So I'm here to call him on.
Yeah.
Yikes.
On anything that goes sideways.
Yes. And you're basically the co-host at this point. So
that's right.
Yeah. And, today what I want to do is get into your story, of course, Tom, and just share around that. I mean, I think it's just so important because everybody has different stories and different backgrounds and just the way their addiction looked. And so I believe the more we get out there, the more we can reach more people. And it's a big deal to come on. So I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah. Like I said before, I'm really glad to be here. My story, like every other addict, recovering addict, I believe it's unique.
Yeah.
I don't. Where you want me to start?
Yeah. Well, I guess to kind of start, do you remember the point of, hey, this is no longer just partying, and I think this might be a bit of a problem? Because you and I crossed paths in Atlanta.
We did.
And we hung out in the same group of people, and all of those people, or a lot of those people, like to party, but they can live their life, And so I'm curious to know that point of kind of where that line was crossed.
Yeah, so Atlanta is different. I call it Never Never Land because people don't like to grow up there. I mean, it was, the culture there was, we went out almost every night.
Yeah.
It was just one of those, let's go out every night. Let's go somewhere. We had friends that owned bars, and there was just always something to do. So for me, it was just like, let's go out. Let's have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I really crossed over. I didn't realize it. I never knew that I had crossed over. But kind of when I was engaged, and I was supposed to get married in April of 2020. And what happened a month before that was COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And me being in healthcare in the medical sales field, reps, we weren't allowed to be in hospitals. I wasn't allowed to do my job. So I was at home, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think really out of sheer boredom, I just started drinking every day, all day long.
So prior to that, it was nighttime. Yeah.
Most of the time, yes. Unless it was a Saturday or a Sunday or
Right.
Sometimes a Thursday, or I was playing golf. There were
Okay, so this is why Chad is here.
Right. It was. Most of the time it was, I would go do my job, go to work, and then, I would drink probably every day, whether it be at home or going
But it would
out.
start happy hour, not 9 a.m. And with COVID,
Correct.
Now it's kind of moving to 9, 10 a.m.
Correct.
Yeah.
Started as happy hour every single day. And then, just with COVID, it started from the moment I woke up. And it wasn't just drinking. It was drugs. It was cocaine. It was Xanax. I actually shattered my elbow on our supposed to be wedding day.
Oh, no.
We had a group of friends over. Our wedding party came over, and we were all drinking, having a good time. We knew they didn't have anything to do because they were supposed to be in our wedding that
Right.
day. So we had a gathering of people, and we started drinking really early. I was drunk and I fell and shattered my elbow and had to have surgery, a plate and 4 screws put in, so you could then add pain pills into the mix of everything I was doing. So
Right.
things got really, really out of hand soon as COVID hit.
And so were there people in your life, like your fiance at the time or your family, your brothers being like, hey, Tom, it's time to like surgery, pain pills, you're off those. Like, let's reel it in a little bit.
No one. So, I mean,
And that's what I was going to ask you. I'm sorry. Every once in a while I'd have a friend that's, it's 3:00 in the morning. We're both doing cocaine. He's like, Chad, I really think you have a problem. Did you? I know everybody you're hanging out with is doing what you're doing, but did you ever have that where one of them's just like, Tom, you've gone too far?
No, not really. It was, I mean, my friends
you hung
were
with the right crowd. Dude.
Yeah, they were wild. Well, I mean, I had so many different groups of friends. So I had friends that would cut it off at 1:00 in the morning, and I would call a different group of friends that I knew would be up in Atlanta or something, I mean, but also during COVID, it started, I'm not proud, but I got an Xbox and I started gaming, playing Call of Duty by myself, doing drugs all night through the night, talking to players with the headset, I mean, it started, a lot of isolation in doing it, even though my fiance was there, she was also drinking, and she would be upstairs and I would be downstairs, and she would go to bed and I would stay up all night.
And you're getting paid. So it all.
Yeah. I mean, I had a job.
It's working.
Yeah. I was getting paid to do nothing. So.
Well, and I think there's a misconception, which I've talked about before on here, but at least for me, if you would have asked me who the alcoholic was, I'd say it's the homeless man under the bridge with a brown paper bag. Like I still had lived in my condo that I rented. I still had, from my perspective, when I was going through it, I was like, I'm not nearly as bad as some of these people. And so like you're saying here, you're like, my my fiance's drinking, I still have my job. So it doesn't seem like in that weird world that we're in, we're still going to be like, hey, these other people are worse than me, or just, this is just how it is kind of thing.
I mean, absolutely. I have a good story about that too. So, I mean, during all of this, you said you still had your condo. Well, we had a nice townhouse in Brookhaven, and my landlord actually passed away from COVID.
Oh, no.
So we stopped paying rent. So essentially, I was squatting in this dead guy's house, trying to figure out what was going on.
Man, everything's going your way.
I mean, right? Right? I mean, so it was, I kind of took over. The delusion that I had, everything was going right. I brought in some friends and we tried to maybe purchase these from them. He had a group of townhomes in Brookhaven and but I was in no condition to do all. I was thinking, if I can just get this next little bit of my life lined up, it would all work out. Yeah.
Well, and that's a very good point. We all think that if I get these external things in my life, surely I'll be okay. Okay. So bring us to when it was, or what, was there anything that happened or a moment of clarity?
There's a hospital stay.
Yeah. Yeah. When did it get burnt to the ground? That's what I'm looking for.
It progressed. So into 2021, we'll skip over the whole saga of me and my fiance. That is a whole nother story, but
that's an hour episode.
Yeah,
it really is. I could tell you a really long story about that, but we had called off the wedding and she had moved out, and I was living by myself in this townhouse, still not paying rent, but still trying to figure out what was going on with the property. Turns out it was in probate court with his children, but none of them had communicated with us, any of the other tenants and any of them. So in 2021, we went back to work, but I couldn't quit drinking. But still didn't realize that, because I didn't know much about alcoholism. I couldn't quit drinking.
You'd never been to a 12-step fellowship
No.
at this point in time, no treatment, no experience with recovery or sobriety.
No.
Yeah.
No. So like it's just when we went back to work, I started drinking. I was still drinking in the morning, doing coke all day, every day. So like I wasn't drunk, cocaine keeps you from getting drunk. So like I was still able to do my job for a while. And then I started dating again. I was dating a wealthy girl who, we traveled, we did a lot of things. I actually like went on vacation, told my company I was working, and I was at the beach for 10 days. Like I wasn't doing my job. I was down at the beach for 10 days and like just kind of texting every now and then, like pretending to work. And then kind of came to a halt in August. So at the beginning of August, my drinking was getting out of control. It's like to where I couldn't really, but I still didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
I was just drinking in the morning, but like my legs weren't working. Like I was just like, all right, well, it's what I do now. This is what I do.
My legs just don't work anymore.
I just drink and do cocaine, and this is my life.
Yeah.
Well,
it's funny you mentioned that because on another episode, Josh Dykes, who's also an alumni, he was talking about this like acceptance of like, this is just the way my life is. This just acceptance of being a drug addict. And that's just how it is. So it's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd fully accepted this is what my life is going to be. And I don't want to speak, but like I have all of my other friends were kind of doing the same thing, but I was going down a different path. At this point, I had kind of only a small circle of friends and the girl I was dating. And so I guess one day I decided I was not going to drink. I was like, I'd had enough. And I had to go do an in-service for the Children's Hospital in Atlanta. And I was teaching the class of about 50 nurses on how to use my product. And I told myself that morning I wasn't going to drink. Well, that was a big mistake, apparently. I didn't know you couldn't quit. I didn't know that detoxing could kill me.
Right.
So I went to the hospital without drinking that morning or doing any substance. And I passed out. The nurses freaked out. They didn't know what was going on.
Well, you were in the perfect place. Right?
Thank goodness I was in the hospital. But I woke up and they had taken care of me, whatever. I wasn't admitted. It was a children's hospital, and I was an adult. So I went home thinking, I still didn't really know what happened. I didn't know that I was withdrawing from alcohol at this point. So, but started drinking that afternoon. And then apparently they had called my company and told them that I fell out in a training. So I lost my job.
You think they had some idea it was alcohol related?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was another thing. My boss who lived in Nashville when he would come visit, we would party together. It's just everybody in the sales world. That's just what you did. We partied a lot.
And that is so true. And the thing with the alcoholic is we think we are in that group of the partiers, but we're in this group over here. That's way past the partiers. And the partiers, like you were saying, I'm doing cocaine at 3 a.m. And they're like, you got a problem.
Yeah. And he knew. And we had actually had a problem before with my drinking at a national sales meeting. So, but it wasn't he was like, just calm down, that kind of thing. But he was also a heavy drinker and partied and did some things illicitly. So when it came to the complaint from an actual hospital, he's like, I can't ignore this, So I lost my job. I had a company car. I lost the girl that I was dating, broke up with me. And I got all in the same week, I got a notice in the mail that the probate court was resolved and the kids were evicting everybody from all of the properties. So they give me 60 days to get out, and I lost everything all in 1 week. And my solution to that was, let's just go party. Let's go out and have fun and forget everything for a while. Well, that turned into a 3-day, let's not go to sleep bender, and just jumping all over the place. When I got home from that, this was kind of a moment where I couldn't sleep. I had done so many drugs and so much drinking, and I couldn't sleep, and I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I was starting to come down and really, really get depressed. And I remember this vividly. This is like the last thing I remember. I remember standing at my kitchen sink, and I had a bottle of Xanax, full bottle of Xanax. And I was just like, I couldn't sleep. I was going crazy. And I poured the whole bottle into my hand. And I was like, you know what? If I wake up, I wake up. If I don't, I don't.
So not really a suicide attempt, but I need to sleep, and if I sleep forever, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, it didn't matter. My life didn't matter to me at that point. To me, I had lost everything all at the same time. So I took a handful of Xanax and woke up in the hospital where I was, what are they, 10, 13? 10,
Yeah.
10,
Do you know
13.
how you got there?
Yeah, so I had apparently called one of my friends, a friend that Sarah knows, and I called him and told him that I didn't want to die before I passed out. And he came over, got an ambulance. And
Oh,
got
man.
I didn't
Luckily,
know that.
didn't take that as a false alarm.
Yeah, so he came over, got an ambulance for me, went to the hospital. And after, I don't remember being in the hospital, but I do kind of remember waking up. I woke up in the psych ward.
That's fun in there.
And it was run by a bunch of French Algerians, and this was Labor Day. This was Labor Day weekend. So I woke up and nobody spoke English, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "Where?" I was like, "Tom, what have you done? How did you get to France?" They spoke French. They only spoke French. I didn't know what was going on. I mean, it was one of the scariest moments of my life. I'm like locked in this place where I was like, "These people." I mean, I was devastated. I was just like, "What happened?" And it gets a little crazier than that. So like I had to stay there for 7 days. And while I was there, I didn't understand what these people were saying to me. And they were trying to give me medication. And I was like, no, I'm not taking anything y'all are giving me. It was just, they were handing me these little cups with the pills in them. And I'd be like, no, I'm not taking it.
Was there any part of you that, like, the paranoia was setting in? You think you're part of like some experiment or something like that? Like you're some kind of
a little
pig?
bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. I was in there with some interesting characters. And I didn't know. And once again, I did not know what was going on. And I couldn't sleep. I was sweating. I was just pouring sweat. And there was nobody to tell me what was going on. They didn't, like I said, they didn't speak English. Well, the doctor comes in on Tuesday after 3 days of the holiday weekend. And as soon as I sat down with the doctor, it's the last thing I remember. I had a seizure in the hospital, in the psych ward. And the doctor was like, all right, here's what's going on. You're withdrawing. You know, I still, in my mind, still didn't care or didn't believe it. So I got out. I got out of the psych ward after 7 days, went back to my townhouse, but where I had been evicted, was like, all right, I'm just going to get another job. But the first thing I did when I got out was get a handle of vodka and an 8-ball.
Yeah.
And, told my parents I was going to be fine, everything like that. And then.
So family knows you were there. Word has traveled a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Word has traveled just to my parents, just to my dad, really. My dad and my brother, Bill.
But that was enough to get the information to the person it needed to get to.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So I didn't know what was going on, but like I don't even remember telling my dad. So my parents, they don't live in Atlanta. They live an hour south in Macon, Georgia. So they never saw what was going on up in Atlanta with me. They thought, I would call them on the phone, and they thought I was doing well because I could put on a pretty good show. Until the show came to a crashing halt.
Yeah.
But so I got an 8-ball and a handle, and I'm sitting at I think I was playing video games or something.
Naturally.
I get a knock, right? I get a knock on my door, and it's my dad and John Fleming. Good old John Fleming. And they were telling me that it's time to go to treatment. I did not go. I didn't go that day. I was like, you're going to give me this weekend. I was like, I'm going to finish what I have here. And then I'll go. And then I'll go. And
I feel like there was more of a delay than that, though. Was it just that weekend?
yeah, it was just Friday because I went to spend the night with John on Sunday.
Okay.
So I went over to John and Mandy's and spent the night with him. And he was telling me, I mean, I had no idea. He was like, yep, I'm a cook. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, John, I've known you for how long? I didn't know John had been there. Me and John had kind of lost touch over the past couple of years.
And when you're talking about been there, you're talking about been to Impact.
Correct.
Yeah.
I had no idea that he was there.
And this is your longtime friend, John. Yeah.
Well, I called my brother over that weekend, and I was like, Bill, what's happening here? I was like, can you get Dad out of here? And he was like, no. He was like, you're going to go with John. Like, and he was like, John has got your back. Like, you're going with him. And I said, all right, fine. But I still didn't. I mean, there's still this delusion in the back of my head that I was just a hard partier, even after not caring about my life at that point. So that's what I did. I got in the car, left at 5 a.m. and pulled up. John told me we were going to Birmingham. I didn't see a city anywhere. There's no city at all.
Yeah, yeah. And Chad, what was your first impression of Tom when he got to Impact?
I didn't think Tom had much of a shot. And I've learned that you just can't, you don't know what God's going to do with someone or when that transformation starts to take place.
Yeah.
But I'd seen enough evidence early on, and there was still a little fight left in this dog.
Yeah.
And it lasted for a while.
Yeah.
It did. I got in there. I'm very lucky that I had someone like John there that was cooking, someone to kind of, tell me what's going on, how to do this and what he did. And so I did the work. I did it, but I was still trying to run the show. I was there was still a lot going on. Like I still had a place in Atlanta that all my stuff was, I had all these other things. I had no money. I had spent everything I had, and so I was still trying. In my mind, I was like, all right, I'm just going to get through this program and I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to Atlanta. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to rebuild my life.
Yeah.
Thinking you'll stay sober, though, and do that? Or we'll see, kind of?
No. Being sober never crossed me. I was like, I'm just going to go through this program. And I never really thought of my life without it.
Yeah.
I never did. And so as I did the work and I learned all the steps and I was still, I don't know, Chad maybe can attest to this a little more, but I would still go into that office every day and try to arrange my life exactly how it needed to be. I would try to put the pieces here and there. And to me, it was so logical. And the fact that
you were being responsible is what you thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, well, I got to get this stuff out of here. I got to do that, and they were like, no. They just kept telling me no. It made me so mad. I think I might have gotten into it with Schwartz once. I might have gotten into it with everybody a little bit, but I just I did the work and I kept going. And I guess it was about 3 days before I left, before the program was over, I still hadn't decided what I was going to do with my life. Like I was just like, all right, they're pitching phase 2 to me. They're like, you need to go to phase 2. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to I've got to make money. I've got to get, just everything else was still a determining factor of what was going to happen in my life. It wasn't. Well,
let me ask you this real quick. So you said like throughout basically the whole time, you still had this lurking notion or whatever, not fully bought into this way of life. but there was still a willingness within you because you were doing the work, and you were, so it's kind of like you were like stuck in between like this world of like, okay, there's this willingness here. I'm doing it. I may not know why, but I also want my old life back. So
that is a great way to put it. I never thought about it like that. I don't know why I'm doing it. Like, it was like the angel and the devil on your shoulder, and you're just kind of fighting. That's a great way to look at it. I never thought of it that way, but yes, that was there. But so I had tried to arrange some things, because this all happened with it's like when I lost my job in my old company, and they had some money that, even though I was owed, but because I was working really hard, right? But so I kind of started trying to figure out what I was going to do, where I was going to go. And well, I had my stepbrother who lived in Atlanta. I had him checking my mail and like following up with all the stuff that was going on at my house. And he called him one day, and he was like, "Hey man, you got a check. You got a check in the mail." And it just so happened to be enough money for me to just kind of be like, just kind of this sigh of, all right. And I had this complete and utter like surrender moment. I was like, this is what God is telling me I need to do. I need to stay here. I need to go to phase 2. I need to continue this work. And just kind of everything just kind of lifted off my shoulders, where I was finally able to listen and take direction from people like Chad. I was like, all right, we're going to go to phase 2. And that was just the moment I knew that like God had my back, and I was ready to surrender.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't know that. Chad, do you remember when that happened, or did you recognize a shift, or when did you?
I remember having a conversation. It was just me and you in the office, and you were trying to convince me why, like, you needed to get family to get stuff out of storage or move for you. And I'm like, Tom, you are inconveniencing everybody in your life. And then I didn't know the check. That typically a check, drug addict, alcoholic looks like that, and they're like, one more month to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so for you to have the wherewithal and that experience, like, oh, God's taking care of me, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And it just kind of happened overnight that it really was like Tom fighting us. And then like, who's this guy? When did he show up?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a moment. I mean, I remember it like very, very clearly. Like just, I'd been walking around doing the work, but like still had this weight on my chest and like shoulders that was just keeping me held down. And I remember like the day that happened, it was as if I like floated. I was like, I know what I'm supposed to do now.
Yeah.
This is where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to move my life. There was nothing left for me in Atlanta. There was nothing that I needed to get back to. I was like, I'm just kind of this moment of clarity. It was like, I'm going to move to Birmingham.
You made that decision to stay in Birmingham then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought it was after some time and, what was then our sober living.
I was like, I'm going to stay
Wow.
here and rebuild. I mean, there were some conversations that happened with family and other things, but like, it was just kind of, I knew.
And you hated Birmingham.
I did.
On top of it. And hated Alabama and
so
that it represents.
Right.
My fiance was from here. And so like everything that was associated with her and Alabama, the university, I hated it. It's so bizarre that I had this moment to like, all right, I'm going to move here.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going to rebuild.
Well, and we talk a lot about the gift of surrender, and it sounds like that was a gift because, like Chad said, most drug addicts and alcoholics would be like, I got this check, peace out. Like, but it goes to show that you were doing the work. And so things were happening, even though it wasn't this like white light experience or lightning bolt that it sounded like you kind of had in that moment. But up to that point, things were working, things. And
Definitely. I built a foundation.
Yeah.
By doing the work, I built a foundation to be able to stand on, like
You just needed to be pushed over. You just needed
Yeah.
a little push.
Well,
And that sounds like that check in that little God moment was all you kind of needed. You were closer than any of us thought.
well,
right.
Yeah.
and I know what I was going to say. So when, there's a definition of a spiritual experience of like a profound alteration in our reaction to life. That is a profound reaction to your life as you had been living it, like completely anti-Alabama, absolutely not, got my whole plan. And then, like Chad said, within a day, it was like this shift of a totally different person. And you're like, yeah, that's it. This is the answer. I'm all in. And I just, that is such a perfect example of what this process and this power can do in somebody's life, that like, where you talked about you didn't know any different, and here you are, and it's just this whole new world and perspective that you're now living in a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it really is. I can't even begin to like explain it, how that happened. It was just this overwhelming feeling like, all right, this whole time that I was doing the work, even with 3 days left in treatment, like God was like, all right, this is what it's leading up to.
Yeah.
I've got your back. You've done this part. You have accepted the surrender. You've turned your will and your life over to me. And here's what I'm going to do for you.
Yeah.
And I could not be happier. Like without a doubt, actually, I'm 3.5 years sober today. This has been the best.
Congrats.
Yeah, like to the day.
That is
today.
amazing.
Yeah, so
and
it's
not
been the
a
best.
Coincidence.
No, not at all. It's been the best 3.5 years of my life, without question.
And I think what's unique about your story, Tom, is, we will watch some transformation take place. Like we've seen that before, like guy one day, different guy the next day, but we'll watch him kind of revert back to that. I didn't see that from you, really. It was like old Tom died, here's this new guy. And then like just pushed forward with this new person and everything you did.
Yeah. I mean, that I had to. So it was like, all right, God did that for me. So what am I going to do for him? Well, I'm going to find a way to be of maximum service, right? So when I decided to stay in Birmingham, I just I had to jump into this community with both feet, because like, I will admit, for the first few months of being here, I struggled. I was like, all right, I'm sober, but what, I'm not having a great time. I had to find a way, a semblance of normalcy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I came from a life of where it was normal for everyone to drink and party like I did, right? So I just kind of had to find a way to live my life differently in recovery. And I'm a very social, like outgoing person. So
yes.
I was like, all right, I'm gonna really like force myself into this community of Birmingham and start, letting people know who I am.
Yeah. Well, it's so, you do more than anyone I know. Like Adam's being from here. It's like Tom knows everybody in this town. Like we'll go to dinner or something and everybody's coming up to Tom. I'm like, you just know everybody. But I'm glad you talk about the struggle and how it was uncomfortable those first few months, because it can be very uncomfortable as far as figuring out life and what to do, and especially in a new city and all those things, but you just kept moving your feet and you kept trusting the process.
Yeah. So it's different for me. I watched a lot of people get sober and get miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for me, I was like, I can't do that. I don't want to be miserable. So, I don't want this to sound bad. I don't know how else to make it sound, but like, I didn't want to live recovery 24/7. At first I was just going to meetings. I was going to meetings every single night, and I was doing, I had to find a way to like integrate real life with recovery life.
Well, let's give your other fellowship a plug. They've certainly
Yeah.
Certainly earned it. And it's a big part of your story.
Yeah. So I joined what really kind of took off, and I've been able to help so many people through this organization. I joined an organization called F3. It is F3 stands for Fitness, Fellowship, Faith. So it is a Christian men's, we say workout group, but we do so much more than that.
Yeah.
We have, we work with a lot of charities, do a lot of, we do golf tournaments. We have a crawfish boil coming up on March 20th where last year we raised $190,000 for Restoration Academy. And it's over in Midfield. It's a really, really cool thing they do over there with that school. But there's so many great men in that, and they're pillars of this community. And Birmingham, that's kind of where I took off. Like I found this group of men that, and I built. It was one of the most nerve-wracking things I've ever done because I got out there, and what you do after your first workout is you stand in this circle of 40 to 50 men, and you talk about yourself, and they give you a nickname. But I
do share.
They call me White Walker. Because I'm real white and I walked a lot my first day. I couldn't run. I was overweight. I was out of shape.
In a reference to what was going on television on HBO.
Yeah, but I promise I didn't get out there and say, "Hey, I love Game of Thrones." They named me during the workout. I was so out of breath, and I don't even remember being in the circle. But I created this accountability in my outside of recovery life. So I got out in that circle and I said, guys, I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and this is changing my life. And I've had countless people come to me, "Hey, can you talk to a friend of mine?
Yeah.
Hey, can you do that?" And I was able to incorporate recovery into F3 and help other people that way. Get involved with the Love Lady Center. So started a program where the men of F3 help the children of the Love Lady Center kind of mentor, because Love Lady is all women.
Yeah.
So the boys that live there don't have any men in their lives. So we are working on a program. I'm actually having lunch right after this to kind of get that spring program going for those kids. It's just, I'm helping coach First Tee, which is a nonprofit organization to teach underprivileged kids how to play golf. Just kind of dove into the service aspect of my life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know. And like I said, you do more than anyone I know. And I'm glad out there before this, he was like, I think I've spread myself a little too thin. But it's amazing. And it's just to think you were this guy in your basement playing Xbox day in and day out for 24 hours straight. And now you're out into the community helping kids. And it is incredible.
Yeah. Couple points that
Thank you.
I want to make. One, such a large percentage of people, when they find another fellowship that they really enjoy, they abandon the 12-step fellowship.
Yeah.
And you never did that. You continued to lean into both and really use both to service each fellowship, which is awesome. And the other thing you brought up, Adams talks about the bubble a lot. And the bubble's a good thing. But you had the realization, I can't live in this bubble forever. I have got to step out of this if I'm going to, if God's going to recreate my life, you can't really recreate it in the bubble. At some point in time, I gotta.
Yeah, you're talking about the recovery bubble where you're just you do the steps every single day, all day. You live that way of life, and even
the impact bubble. Just being in the impact bubble, we watch guys I'm not living the sober living. It's safe here.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just kind of who I was. if you ask my parents, my family, I've always been the social, sales guy. I like to be out and meet. I love to meet new people. I love to do new things. And that's just kind of my personality. So I don't know if it will work for everyone, but I try to get my sponsees involved. I've got one of them helping me coach First Tee. I've got them doing F3. I try to get as many people. Even Josh Dykes did F3 for a little bit before he tore his hamstring. But it's just there's different. I'm just trying to show that there are different avenues to help. I mean, you never know when you're going to be able to help somebody. I mean, I have guys in F3 that have become some of my best friends. We're like, hey, we've got a friend that is struggling with alcohol. Can you maybe talk to him?
Yeah.
I've done that a few times. There's actually a few other, quite a few other F3 guys that are in recovery as well. So like, that have had very long-term sobriety, much more than me, so it's just finding these different avenues to share your story, like this podcast, and just never know who you're going to be able to help.
Yeah,
when you do that.
Yes. Okay, so this might be kind of a hard question, but what do you think has been most important for your recovery?
Like Chad said, I think it is the most important thing is like understanding. I will say this actually. Let me go back a little bit. So, I say this to guys all the time. It became where we come from, where drug addicts and alcoholics, where we come from, the friend groups that we ran in before, it's not cool to talk about God. Right. It's just not the cool thing to do. You're like, hey, I mean, being able to talk to another man about your faith in this program and what God has done for you, and like, that's helped me more than anything. Just having this group of people that it's okay to talk about. It's cool even to talk about what God is doing for you, because that stigma that like, hey, when somebody comes up to you and you're like, hey man, you should pray about that. You're like, shut up, nerd. Shut up, nerd. Like, no, like that's not how it works. Like, you kind of got to get away from that and understand that this way of life and that what God is doing for us is something really cool to talk about.
Yeah.
And F3 is a big part. Like, they're all men of God. And I've dated women who are like, I can't believe that men get together and talk about God. And like, y'all talk about the things you talk about. Like, in recovery, it's incredible to have that.
Yeah. It's not the norm.
And here's the coolest part of F3. Like, me and Tom would go play golf and then meet one of his F3 buddies. And he's like, hey, Chad, this is French fry. And then we'd leave. And I'm like, I'm not calling that guy French fry. What's his real name? Tom's like, I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, I know you're right. That still happens this day. I'm like, what's that dude's real name? I'll see him out in public. Like, I'll be out with my girlfriend and she'll be like, what's his real name? I don't know.
Not quite sure.
Yeah.
That's so funny. All right. Well, to kind of close out, is there anything or any advice you would give to someone that's struggling with addiction, or someone that has a loved one that's struggling and maybe in the place where you were, they don't even know they're in addiction or what's going on,
Or struggling with the idea of going to a facility.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, going to treatment is one thing. Like that, something no one wants to do, right? It is not something. Being able to have someone to reach out to, that's why doing this podcast is so important. I hope people, I'm very lucky to have someone who was like, I know this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
And you're coming with me,
Yeah.
So don't be afraid. I mean, you never know who you're going to help. Don't be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my
Looking
best
back
advice.
on it, was it fun? Was your experience at Impact and then following Impact, was it fun?
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I mean, while you're there, you don't realize it.
Yeah.
You think, and this was when it was 42 days. I think it's like 30, but
35 now.
35, yeah. So during those 35 days, you're like, man, it's the longest 35 days of my life. But like, it's just a blip of the best life to come, like the best years of my life. Like, and you always say this, and I think about this, is I still truly believe the best years of my life lie ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's been your experience so far.
So far.
Yeah.
Continues to get better and better.
Yeah. All right. Any other closing thoughts?
No, thank you so much for letting me do this.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
We're grateful for Tom Arnold.
Yes, we are.
He's a blessing in our lives.
For sure.
No, I'm grateful for you, Chad.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on. And thank you for tuning in to another episode. I hope today's conversation has inspired you, opened your mind, maybe even your heart. But remember, you're not alone. If you found this episode helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on social. We have all the links in the description below. But until then, keep making an impact. Bye, y'all.